In this lecture segment, we're going to finish out our story of the trajectory of Greek art by considering what happens after the classical age, what happens after the time of Polykleitos. To do this, we'll talk about a group of sculptures made in the Hellenistic age. Greek art after Polykleitos uses the lessons of Greek classicism to create viewer-engaging depictions of humanity. Alexander the Great, a non-Greek, formed a Greek empire of all the territory in purple that you see on this map, in essence covering the areas we've already talked about in class. Greeks engaged with new peoples and ideas, and this contributed to shifts in art. Alexander the Great established economic and political control of this area during his lifetime, but at his death in 323 BC, his bickering generals fought for control of the territory and split it up among themselves. And this marks the beginning of Hellenistic art made by artists who have learned all of their Greek lessons about the representation of the ideal, and at the same time naturalized human form, but are using those lessons to show scenes of activity, movement, or drama, or abandoning the ideal and showing instead the everyday, the individual. One of these works that shows greater movement and activity is the Nike of Samothrace that depicts winged victory as she alights down and lands in the midst of a spray of water. The sense of movement and drama and activity within her form is typical of Hellenistic art. You can see that the developments we saw at the Parthenon and using drapery to reveal the body underneath have been magnified as the drapery is now wet and clinging, showing us that ideal form, but one that is powerful and dramatic. Depictions of male figures in Hellenistic art often use bulkier, incredible Hulk-like musculature, as you see in this depiction of the Laocoon, a Trojan priest and his sons being killed by serpents, a work which also embodies the greater activity, intensity, and torsion that is typical of the direction of art during this period. We see a sense of pathos and emotion. Gone is the repose and calm we saw with the Doryphorus, and in its place is feeling, emotion from the figures, which we as viewers also sense and feel. Remember that our overall constant in Greek art is change, and in just 400 years, massive change has occurred in Greek art, from the Kouros statues to the Doryphorus to the Laocoon. Compare this to the consistency of style and conventions that we saw in Egyptian art over thousands of years. Let's look at one final work from the Hellenistic period that shows us an episode of cultural interchange made visible in art. This is a depiction of Arsinoe II, a queen of Egypt, during the Ptolemaic period when Egypt was ruled by descendants of Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals and Arsinoe's father. It resembles the Khafra sculpture we studied in Egyptian art in material, diorite, and draws on Egyptian style in the pose of the figure with one foot forward, like the heavily Egyptian-influenced Kouroi statues of Greek art. But it draws on Greek style in the wet drapery look, as the garment clings to the skin, showing an idealized female body like the Nike of Samothrace. It uses Greek style because Egypt was under control of the Greeks, and works of art needed to speak both Egyptian and Greek to communicate with diverse communities. The conventions of Egyptian art that we learned about are mixed with the influence of Greek art to produce a hybrid work that visualizes for us the significant cultural interactions of the Hellenistic period. Even the iconography of the sculpture, a depiction of a daughter of the Greek ruler of Egypt, also brings cultures together. She was worshipped as a form of the Greek goddess Aphrodite and the Egyptian goddess Isis, as a cult statue of a queen and deity who came into being due to the interaction of cultures in the Hellenistic period. It will last until 31 BCE, when Rome comes to the fore, a civilization that will base much of their art and architecture on the lessons they learned from the Greeks, lessons you have now learned as well.